of the most important underlying principles that we go by when thinking about what supply to accept and what not is that it's incredibly important to know where supply comes from. So to explain that, let me first say at a high level, you can think of there being two ways that fraud enters the RTB ecosystem. Fraud can be initiated by a publisher, so they could be sourcing bad traffic, or they could be hiding ad units or engaging in some other sort of bad activity. But fraud can also be introduced by intermediaries who are involved in the chain of custody or the supply path, the sell inventory. Now, without first ruling out whether fraud is introduced by intermediaries, we won't be able to work out whether an apparent case of fraud is in fact a problem caused by the publisher or if it's bad intermediaries in between. So first we need to rule out bad intermediaries, and so we need to buy only from trusted supply paths. Ultimately, what we're seeking to do is maximize our customers' working media and minimize their fraud risk. And by that I mean maximize the amount of their spend that goes to actual media, that goes to the publisher instead of going to unnecessary middlemen. And we do this by requiring that bid requests are transparent, traceable, and accurate, meaning they have the information we need to be able to follow it back to the source through however many parties it passed through. And that includes things like the supply chain object. We also want to avoid unnecessary indirection and duplication. And I'll talk more about this in a minute, but there is indeed quite a lot of that in the RTB ecosystem. And better value for customers can be achieved by avoiding it. So supply chain object and other tools like ads.txt and sellers JSON are essential tools for us to do this supply curation. On the next slide, I'll talk a bit more about what I mean about these unnecessarily indirect and duplicative supply paths. So in a simple world, in an ideal world, things kind of look like this. You have publishers who work directly with ad exchanges or SSPs. And those ad exchanges or SSPs work with DSPs, and the advertisers or their agency works with the DSP. And it's nice and simple, and it's easy to follow the money. But in the real world, it turns out to not be quite so simple. So in the real world, as the next slide shows, there are, in many cases, a large web of intermediaries involved in bringing ad impressions to market. So a publisher might work with some sort of ad network or SSP, and that ad network or SSP might not be directly integrated with ad exchanges. It might work with another entity who is integrated with ad exchanges, and the inventory will make it to the DSPs that way. Now, this isn't always a bad thing. So there's some types of intermediaries that provide value to the market by connecting small publishers. So, for example, consider small publishers like a recipe blog. They're not necessarily big enough to have direct access to the ad exchanges, and so these intermediaries can act as an aggregator that works with a large number of these small blogs and creates enough volume that collectively that intermediary can get a seat on an ad exchange to sell on behalf of those publishers. And that's valuable. But there are also a lot of cases of intermediaries just reselling to each other. Many smaller exchanges might have direct integrations with some DSPs, but also be integrated with several other larger exchanges to help bring inventory to market. And so that creates a scenario where there are a great deal of redundant paths where the exact same impressions and the exact same opportunities arrive at the DSP in multiple ways, except some of those times it's an unnecessarily indirect path. As well, this indirection creates a lot of opportunities for bad actors to hide, because some of these intermediaries may be accepting traffic for a given website or app from multiple different sources. Maybe some of those sources are genuine traffic direct from the publisher, and maybe some of them are spoofed, invalid traffic. And a challenge here is that, these intermediaries will often ask for publishers to list quite a lot of accounts in their ads.txt file, the accounts that the intermediary directly holds on exchanges, anybody who they want to resell the supply through. And ads.txt has been incredibly effective at reducing the danger of spoofing, but you have to keep in mind that when something is put in an ads.txt file, it is an endorsement to allow somebody to claim to sell inventory for that domain or app. Not actually sell it, claim to sell it. So if entities are listed indiscriminately, it creates an opportunity for bad actors to take advantage of that and supply inventory to these intermediaries who may not be so choosy and may be willing to accept supply from multiple different paths. And so it provides opportunities and risks for intermediary-based fraud to sneak into the ecosystem. But there is some tooling that can help identify this, as well as just generally help in identifying unnecessarily circuitous or indirect supply paths.